Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. My name is Bethany and today is going to be the biggest wrap up I've ever done. So I somehow read 35 books in December. Yeah, I don't know how that happened. In September, which was my first video, I read 30 books and I was like, wow, I'm very impressed with myself. That's amazing. And then here we are with 35. So a lot of the books were pretty short. If you watched my December TBR video, I intentionally chose some short books to wrap up as part of like my advent calendar because I wanted to read a book a day and I knew I was going to be really busy. So a lot of these were quick, I will admit, and there was some last minute under the gun reading to hit my Goodreads goal of 250 for the year, which I did successfully. So I'm actually going to start with my least favorite books and then kind of go up to my higher ones. I'm trying to get a little bit better about having like a system of ratings because normally I'll finish a book and in the moment, I'm like, oh my God, 5 stars, loved it. And then a week later, I'm like, that was not a 5-star book. So what I'm doing is a 5-star book is like all-time favorite. I'm not gonna stop talking about it and I'm gonna remember it. And I'm gonna remember it. A 4.5 is like a really great, awesome book, but it wasn't quite, like there wasn't that extra little spark that made me fall in love with it. 4 is very enjoyable, but nothing super special. 3.5 is like just a little bit better than okay. So like pretty good. 3 is, you know, fine. Didn't hate it, didn't love it. And then 2 and 1 are kind of self-explanatory, I think. So I had an amazing month, as usual. I feel like I had a ton of 5 and 4.5 star reads, which is awesome. But we are going to start with a 3-star book. So the first one was Bridgerton, The Duke and I. So I bought this solely because I want to watch the Bridgerton show and I felt the need to read the book first. So I bought the first one and thought I'd see how it went. Just a 3-star. It was fine, you know, I enjoyed it, I flew through it, but I was just kind of meh when it was over, and I'm certainly not planning to buy any of the other 8 books. I'm definitely gonna watch the show though. If you're not familiar, this follows a girl named Daphne and a man named Simon in Regency London, and it's about courtships and secrets, etc., etc. It's kind of like Gossip Girl meets Pride and Prejudice. So I'm gonna be here for the show, definitely. It seems to give off Rain vibes, and I loved the show Rain, but the book was just okay. I also gave 3 stars to Ice Like Fire by Sarah Rush. So you'll see the first book in the series later under a higher category, but the second book was a little bit of a disappointment to me. I just felt like I was really slogging through it and I couldn't get into the plot or the characters. There was a lot of what tends to happen in second books where they're just going places and nothing is actually happening. You know what I mean? So I'll talk more about this when I get to the first book, plot-wise, but the second book was a 3-star. Finally, we have Vasa in the Night by Sarah Porter. I feel conflicted about this because I think that I might have just been too dumb to get it. This is based on a Russian folktale, I think it's The Firebird, that I don't know. So I think if I had read that folktale first, I might have enjoyed this more because it is so weird. It doesn't make sense. It's about this girl named Vasa who lives with her stepmother and bickering stepsisters, and Brooklyn is like weird and magical, but in a bad way. And then she has to go to this store that's got legs and they cut people's heads off and she works there. There's swans, there's so much happening. I felt like I was having a fever dream while I read this, and I think the writing is great, I just don't think I understood it. So it's kind of a soft 3 stars because I'm confused. And I only had one 3.5 star, and that was Royal Holiday by Jasmine Guillory. This is part of a companion series and I would read the rest of them. You know, it was just a fluffy romance, but not one that was super memorable to me. Follows a girl named Vivian who is given the opportunity to travel to England with her daughter who is styling a duchess, and she has her own little love story with an aide to the queen. So I loved having like a middle-aged protagonist in a romance. I think that was really cool, and it's set in England at Christmas, which was exactly the vibe that I was looking for in my life right now. However, it was just kind of meh. The writing, it felt as though, like, you know when a character says something and you try to picture someone saying that sentence in real life, and you're like, man, if someone said that, it would be so weird. And maybe I'm just misinterpreting this character. Maybe she really would talk like that. But it just fell a little bit flat to me and the characters didn't seem very realistic. Okay, now we're getting into the good ones. And like I said, there's a ton more. So I have a bunch of 4 stars, which were good, but nothing super special. And the first one was like a novella that I finished literally at 11:55 p.m. on New Year's Eve. I almost said Christmas Eve, to get to that Goodreads goal. So to be honest, I forget the ending because I was so tired and just trying to make myself stay up to finish it. It's not a good way to read a book, so I would like to read it again next Christmas because it is specifically centered around Christmas. And the book, is Wrapped Up in You by Talia Hibbert. So I saw that she had a Christmas novella releasing and I knew I had to read it because I'm obsessed with her Brown Sisters series, and it was super sweet. So again, from what I remember, it was adorable, loved it, the characters were great, I enjoyed the plot a lot, I just don't remember it. So I gave it 4 stars kind of arbitrarily, to be honest. But Yeah, that's my great review. Next up we have Wilder Girls by Rory Power. This follows a kind of a trio of girls at a boarding school on an island that has been put under quarantine because they keep developing these weird symptoms. Like one of them has an extra spine, one of them has like something behind their eye, like it's super creepy. So this again felt like a fever dream, but in a better way. Like it was very eerie. I love Rory Power's writing style. I read Burn Our Bodies Down and I think I did like that one more. There's nothing specifically wrong with this one. I think that the characters were really good to read about and they were all very distinct. Like it's got 3 POVs, but you could always tell who was who. It just wasn't like an all-time favorite, but I would recommend it for sure. And look at how cool the cover is. Like, I couldn't resist. I also read Ink and Bone by Rachel Kane, which is the first book in the Great Library series. I love this series. It follows a world where the Great Library of Alexandria never burned down and they've kind of become this dictatorship over the world, so they control all knowledge and no one is allowed to have books unless they're in the library. The first book is just a 4-star, but you'll see the second one later. I'm rereading them to read the last book because I never got to that one before when they were coming out. I really enjoy these. They are super quick and like very YA, but I like the characters a lot. There's a ton of diversity, which I love. And I just think the world is so interesting. Like honestly, even if the plot and characters weren't super well developed, I would read this just for like the library thing. I think it's awesome. So yeah, 4 stars to Ink and Bone. I also read The City Baker's Guide to Country Living by Louise Miller. So objectively, this was not a good book. Subjectively, I gave it 4 stars because I had such a good time reading it. This follows a girl named Olivia who has like a fiery disaster at her super fancy pastry chef job in Boston, and she randomly runs away to this town that her best friend is from and ends up becoming a baker at an inn there. So it's like super charming, big city girl in a small town vibe, and it's such a Hallmark movie and I loved it so much. See, this is interesting because I had the same issue with this where things that the characters said did not feel real to me, but I liked it. I think it worked for this one. It was just so cute. I would watch this in movie form for sure. And the characters were like really flawed, which I liked, you know. This wasn't necessarily a Christmassy book, even though it has snow on the front, but I think it's great to read just because it's so cozy and like almost nostalgic for small towns, I guess. Does that make sense? So it was a great winter read. I'd recommend it. I also read Lair of Dreams by Libba Bray, which is the second book in the Diviners series, and obviously I gave this 4 stars, but I honestly thought that this series was going to be like a 5-star all-time favorite, and I'm surprised that it's not. It's a mystery set in the 1920s. There's kind of a different villain each book, but there's a cast of main characters basically. Some of them have special powers and they're trying to hunt down these supernatural villains. So it's kind of like Scooby-Doo, but in the 1920s New York, and it's cool. Yeah, so I do like them. I just am not in love with them. I think that the writing is beautiful. I love Libba Bray. She is awesome. But yeah, the plot is maybe just a little bit too long for me, but I do enjoy them and I will be reading the 3rd and 4th book. This one is really random. I read Tales of the Peculiar by Ransom Riggs, which is like a fairy tale collection set in the Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children world. I really love fairy tale collections. I think they're super sweet. This one I started reading because I was exhausted all the time and I wanted something really short to read before bed. So I would read like one of each of these tales. And I really enjoyed it. The writing is great. The fairy tales are like, they're kind of like fables in that they have a moral, but they're not so obvious. Like there's a little bit of deeper meaning, but you have to really think about it. And this book is just beautiful. Like it's got a ribbon, which I love, and it's got these end papers. So yeah, I'm excited to keep reading in the series because I've only read books 1 and 2, but this was a great addition and a lovely addition to my collection. The last 4-star read I had was Snow Falling by Jane Gloriana Villanueva. This is another one that I know objectively as a piece of writing does not deserve this rating, but I had such a good time. It's basically a novelization of Jane the Virgin, but it's also the book that Jane writes in Jane the Virgin. It's one of my all-time favorite shows, and this was just so fun to read. It's set in 1902 Miami, so they talk all different, and it's just like so cute. And it's really quick, so I would definitely recommend this if you're a Jane the Virgin fan. If you are not a Jane the Virgin fan, do not read this. I've determined that they are redoing a roof next door, so they keep like taking breaks from hammering, and then they start hammering. So we'll see if they start again. But we're on to the 4.5-star reads now. So these are ones that I super duper loved, had a great time, would 1000% recommend. They're just not like over the edge, you know? So the first one is Down Among the Sticks and Bones by Shauna McGuire. This is the second book in the Wayward Children series, and I think I like this one more than the first. So the first book is at a school where all these children who were taken to magical worlds come because they can't fit into normal society. And this book specifically follows Jack and Jill, who are 2 really interesting characters from the first one, when they first went to their world. The writing is beautiful, and I found both characters to be very different and well developed, and there's a lot of really interesting messages about femininity and like self-identity in here. So I really liked it, and I'm excited to keep going with the series. I'm just kind of buying them slowly because I truly can't justify $25, even with my work discount, for a book this tiny. Okay, and now I have Paper and Fire by Rachel Kane. So this is the second book in the Great Library series. I've already talked about the first book, so this is obviously a continuation. I just liked it a little bit better, 0.5 stars better, just because the stakes are higher, the world is bigger, and it's just a little bit more exciting. So yeah, I can't wait to do books 3 and 4. I think they're right there actually. So those are gonna be on the list soon, even though they are not on my January TBR. That was unwise. I read some really awesome middle grade this month, and this is the first one I want to talk about. So that is The Train to Impossible Places by P.G. Bell. This follows a girl named Susie. One night a train literally appears in her living room with, I think, trolls. Yeah, with a troll on board, and she ends up going to join the troll postal service and going into these magical upside down worlds. It was so well done. It was really, you know, I think with middle grades, the story can be cool, but if they're written in such a young way, they're not going to be enjoyable for an adult. This one is the perfect balance. Next, I read the first book in the Lux series by Jennifer L. Armentrout. This is books 1 and 2 in a set, but the first book I believe is called Lux Obsidian. They follow a girl named Katie who moves into a house next to a boy named Damon, and yeah, he ends up being a supernatural creature and they fall in love. Kind of. Basically, this book is Twilight, but with a different supernatural creature, and they're so fun. Do I think that this was great literature? Absolutely not. Am I super excited to read book 2? Yes. Hence, 4.5 stars, because I could not justify 5. I mean, the writing is not bad. Like, I think it's good, obviously. But yeah, if you like Twilight, read this. I also read my first graphic novel ever this month, which was exciting, and that is A Thief Among the Trees by Sabaa Tahir. And the artists, I believe, are Nicole Andelfinger and Sonia Liao. I read this obviously because it's a companion to An Ember in the Ashes. This follows Elias and Helene on a mission before they graduated Blackcliff. I was shocked by how much I enjoyed this. It was really engaging. I didn't know how I was going to do with graphic novels, but I'm really excited to get into more. I would love any recommendations you have for good graphic novels for kind of a beginner. But yeah, I think it was good to start with one that's like a plot that I'm kind of familiar with. Like, I know the characters and I know kind of the premise. So yeah, 4.5 stars to this one. I thought it was really fun. This one was a real surprise. So I read A Curse So Dark and Lonely by Bridget Kemmerer. This is the first book in the Cursebreakers trilogy. This one was almost a 5-star too. It's a Beauty and the Beast retelling about a girl named Harper who has cerebral palsy. She lives in our world, and then one day she sees a girl being kidnapped and goes to rescue the girl, and she ends up being taken to a magical world called Emberfall. It's the same kind of story as Beauty and the Beast, so you can guess the rest from there. But it was a lot more than that too. I thought it was really, really great. It was super enjoyable. The third book comes out this month, so I'm reading the second book soon. And then obviously the third book once it comes out. Harper was a great main character. She was not like that classic YA fantasy protagonist that is just good at everything and perfect and beautiful. She has flaws, but realistic flaws, and you still love her and can kind of understand why several men might be into her, you know? Another surprise was Girl Serpent Thorn by Melissa Bashardock. This follows a girl named Soraya who is poisonous to the touch, basically. If she touches a living being, they will die. So she's been kind of secluded. It's inspired by Persian mythology and is set in a Middle Eastern kingdom, which is one of my favorite settings. I love reading anything set in a Middle Eastern inspired world. Someone has joined us. Is she gonna sit? Yes, my good girl. Okay, so I'm scared to move because she will jump on me, or jump off me, but Girl Serpent Thorn. So it follows a girl named Soraya. Like I said, she basically ends up going on this mission to reverse her curse, but she also wants to kind of help her kingdom. So there's a lot going on. One of the things I liked the most about it was that it had a lot of commentary on like self-confidence and accepting yourself with your flaws. So I thought that was really well done, aside from the beautiful setting and the wonderful writing. So this one, again, maybe this should be a 5-star, because I can't come up with a reason that it's not. But I also can't come up with a reason that it should be. That's what 4.5 is for. Okay, I'm just talking to myself about my rating system now. So yeah, I definitely recommend this one. I had to move to get the books and she left me. That's upsetting. Anyway, 4 more books in this category. So the first one is another romance, In a Holidays by Christina Lauren. This one's been super popular lately. Obviously, it's a Christmas romance. It follows a girl named Mei Lin who has spent the Christmas season at a cabin in Utah with her family and then like some family friends every year since she can remember. And this might be the last Christmas. So she ends up in this like Groundhog Day kind of scenario. This was so fun to read. Not the most complex story of all time, but I had such a great time. It was so festive and the romance was really sweet. So I definitely enjoyed this one and I think it's probably going to be an annual reread. Okay, I just need to insert this here because I'm already changed and I forgot to include this. So this is Rules for Being a Girl by Candace Bushnell and Katie Coutinho. I gave this 4.5 stars. It follows a girl named Marin. She gets sexually assaulted, kind of, by a teacher at her school and struggles with the repercussions of reporting him. So it was a really awesome commentary on feminism. I super enjoyed reading it. It made me want to read more feminist literature, and yeah, great read. I now have 2 books in the same series. So the first book is in the 5-star category, but I'll kind of talk about these quickly. So first off is One Dark Throne. This is the sequel to 3 Dark Crowns by Kendara Blake. And then Queens of Fenburn is a companion novella, and it's got 2 stories in it, The Young Queens and The Oracle Queen. I just thought that One Dark Throne was not quite as immersive as 3 Dark Crowns, so I still had a great time reading it, but it didn't have that 5-star feeling. It was a little slower, I think, to kind of set up like some showdown type events, but yeah, it was still really great, and the character development in this was amazing. That's kind of what I loved the most. I often find that novella books, like novella companions, are not that great, or you just kind of like, you enjoy them a lot if you're a huge fan of the series, but otherwise they don't add a lot. But this one I thought was great. It adds a kind of fun dimension to the lives of the queens when they're children, as well as a story from the history of the queendom that we're in, because we don't know a ton other than what we're kind of told by these unaware characters. So I loved this one. As a novella, I feel like it didn't quite get 5 stars, but it was still really good. The last book I read that I gave 4.5 stars was The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. I've been so excited to read this for so long. I read Sally Thorne's other book, 99% Mine, sometime in the last couple years, and it was terrible. It was a while ago, so I can't remember exactly what I hated about it. It was such a weird romance and like possessive, but not in an attractive way. I don't know. I hated it, so I was like, okay, I guess I'll read The Hating Game. But I saw so many people who loved The Hating Game and then also didn't like that one, so I was like, okay, I'll be fine. They're also making a movie out of The Hating Game starring Lucy Hale and some very attractive guy. So I think that's going to be great, and even more so now that I've read the book. It was so sweet. It's basically like an enemies to lovers office romance. The main character's Lucy, and what is her? I can't remember the guy's name. It's a little bit unclear why they hate each other so much. They're basically assistants to 2 separate leaders at their company, and they work in the same room, and they just like despise each other, but you're never really clear why. But then of course they end up falling in love. It's got all kinds of wonderful romance tropes. It was super spicy and super fun to read, and I loved it so much. Now we are getting into the 5-star books. So there's a shocking amount in here. Some of them are rereads of childhood favorites that are always going to be 5 stars, but some of them were new finds. So the first one is The Sky Beyond the Storm by Saba Tahir. This is the conclusion to An Ember in the Ashes series, which is one of my all-time favorites. So this one, I'm super happy to report, got 5 stars. I read it really quickly because I just physically couldn't stop, which was a feeling I've been kind of missing in my reading lately. A lot of times I'm like forcing myself to keep reading, even if I'm really enjoying a book. But anyway, this one was super gripping. So I can't obviously tell you what this one is about, but it follows the same characters from the rest of An Ember in the Ashes series, and it's kind of a Roman-inspired world. The 2 main characters are a slave girl and a soldier boy, and it is so good. It is so expansive and beautiful, and the world and the characters just get bigger and better as the story goes on, and this was a wonderful conclusion with a lot of heartbreaking moments. This was a book that I read on New Year's Eve because I needed to get to 250. So I reread, obviously, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. I think I've reread this about 35 times in my life, which is terrifying. But it's so short, you know? I hope you know what this is about, so I'm not going to talk about it. I also want to say that I don't support J.K. Rowling, and I think she's the absolute worst, but these are a huge comfort series to me, so I'm going to keep rereading them. Yeah, but J.K. Rowling sucks. So yeah, 5 stars just for the nostalgia, if I'm being honest. So now we're getting back into a thread of this video that started at the 3-star mark. Ow. It's Snow Like Ashes by Sarah Rash. I already talked about book 2 in this series. That one was a 3 stars, but this one is a 5 star. I feel a little bitter now because I didn't like the second book, so part of me is like, maybe this isn't 5 stars, but after I read it, I was like, oh no, this is 5 stars. It follows a girl named Mira and a boy named Mather, who are some of the last free survivors of their kingdom, which is called Winter. They are basically trying to take back their kingdom from the evil king of Autumn. Autumn? Spring. They're season kingdoms, clearly. I really liked the writing in this. It's very simplistic, but not in a bad way. Like, it's not that kind of beautiful, poetic prose that I've been reading and loving lately. But I liked the story, I liked the characters a lot, and I had a great time. I'm reading book 3 right now, and it seems to be somewhere in between, like maybe a 4 star. So I'm interested to see how the series ends, but this was a great start, and I'll let you know if you should start the series once I'm done. This book was a huge surprise too. So this is The Glass Sentence by S.E. Grove. It's the first book in the Mapmakers trilogy. I already talked about this a little bit in my January TBR because I'm reading the second book. But this follows a girl named Sophia who comes from a family of explorers and cartologists. They live in a version of our world where there was like a cataclysm and all of the continents and countries in some places were split into like different time periods. So some of them will be living in like Renaissance London, but then in America is like pre-Columbian America. This is a middle grade, and it reminded me of The Golden Compass in the kind of tone and complexity. I had such a good time reading this, and I'm so excited to get into book 2, and I can't believe I'd never heard of these before. I would have died over these when I was a child, but I'm dying over them as an adult, so that's fine. Okay, the next few are a couple of rereads. So I read Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. This I'm 99% sure I read with my mom when I was a kid, but I don't super remember. I saw the Greta Gerwig version of the movie recently and loved it, and it reminded me how much I love this story and the characters. The most accessible classics I've ever read. It's so fun to breeze through, and the characters are just so timeless. Like, I think you could read this in any century and take something from it. I also learned that the regular version of Little Women is like double this length, but it's Little Women and then Good Wives published in one volume. So there is a character death in the end of Good Wives. If you haven't read it or seen the movie, where have you been? But I won't say who it was. I was like not emotionally prepared to go through that, but I picked this book for my advent calendar, so I was like, okay, we'll read it. And then I got to the end and realized that it was in the next book, and I was like, yes. So now, I have another book to read when I'm feeling more prepared for some trauma. And I didn't have to go through it this month. So this was a 5 star. I had such a great time, and I can't wait to read this with my kids. In a similar vein, I read Little House in the Big Woods by Laura Ingalls Wilder. These were so fun. I loved these when I was a kid. Like, these were one of my favorite series ever, and they're still so cute. There's a lot of hunting in this and like graphic descriptions of like preserving meat, but which I don't love. I'm a vegetarian, like it upsets me. But obviously I completely understand that like they were living this lifestyle and they needed to hunt. So I'm not begrudging them that, I just don't love reading about it. But it's just such a nostalgic story to me, and for that reason alone I gave it 5 stars. More childhood rereads. I read The Magician's Nephew and The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe by C.S. Lewis. I have a beautiful illustrated edition of these that was so fun to read from. I set up like a Narnia ambiance on the TV, I lit a candle, I had a coffee, and I read these, and it was so nice. So this is actually the first book in the Chronicles of Narnia series. It's kind of like the origin story of how Narnia was created. I feel like people usually start with The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, but I think this one is so good. It's so interesting to me to see kind of the background of this world, and it's probably my favorite. And then obviously The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is a classic. Like, again, if you don't know what this is about, just read it. I'm really excited to rewatch the movies. I feel like I watch this one all the time, but I've never actually seen past this one. Like, I haven't seen The Voyage of the Dawn Treader or Prince Caspian or anything. So that's definitely on the agenda for the winter and reading the rest of the books, because again, don't know that I've ever made it to the end, but obviously I had to start here. This will be pretty brief because I've already talked about 2 other books in the series, but I read 3 Dark Crowns by Kendara Blake and gave it 5 stars. This is a super dark, addictive fantasy about 3 sisters, Catherine, Mirabella, and Arsinoe. They all have different powers, and they are triplet queens. So when they turn 16, they're going to have to kill each other. Whoever survives will be the queen of their island queendom. And then eventually that person will have triplets. It kind of keeps going like that. So yeah, pretty dark. I think that what I've been missing from YA fantasy lately is kind of that darkness. So this really took it to the next level and was kind of like between young adult and adult. I can't wait to finish the series. They're on my TBR for January. But yeah, I can't believe it took me this long to read this, and I would definitely recommend getting into them. I also read 2 new adult contemporary / historical favorites this month, I guess. So the first one is The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett. I borrowed this from work because it's pretty short and I don't feel like I'll reread it, but I did absolutely love it. Follows a set of twins who grow up in the South. I can't remember exactly what decade, but basically they are white passing. They end up living very different lives. One of them is pretending to be white and one of them has embraced her blackness. So it follows both of the twins and then one of their daughters as well. It was very simply written, but in a stunning way. The story was wonderful, and the only thing I didn't love was the ending. It felt very abrupt, but the more I thought about it, the more I think that was the point. So if you've seen this one everywhere like I have, it is worth picking up. And I also read The Lying Life of Adults by Elena Ferrante. So I love the Neapolitan Chronicles by Elena Ferrante, and this book was very similar to them. So if you didn't like those, you won't like this. But it follows a girl named Giovanna, and she basically, really there's not a plot other than it's just her going from teenagehood to adulthood. It's got Elena Ferrante's signature writing style, which I would love to know, is that a function of the translation, or is that how the writing is and then the translation translated it very effectively? Do you know what I mean? I wish I could read it in Italian, but obviously I can't. Yeah, it was just super good. I loved getting back into the world of Naples from Elena Ferrante's point of view, and it cemented in my mind that I will read anything she writes. The last book on this list is this beautiful piece of literature. This is These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong. When you go into this knowing that Chloe Gong wrote this as, she's in college, I think she's 21 or 22 maybe, it is astonishing that she wrote a book of this quality. Not that I don't think young people are talented, but you know what I mean? For a debut, this is stunning. I also have this beautiful Fairy Loot edition, so it's pink on the cover and it's got these sprayed edges and there's art on the inside dust jacket. But basically, this is a retelling of Romeo and Juliet set in 1920s Shanghai. There is some sort of monster going around and people are going mad and ripping their throats out, which is quite graphically described. And Romeo and Juliet are from rival gangs. They're actually called Roma and Juliet in this one. And they are kind of teaming up to try and figure out what this monster is and stop it. Everything about this was perfect. I loved the writing. I loved the diversity. There's so much different representation in here. It was so neat to see all the different callbacks to Romeo and Juliet. It's its own story, but it does take a lot of inspiration from Shakespeare, obviously. I can't wait for the next book in the series, and yeah, Chloe Gong is definitely an all-time favorite author of mine now, and she has a super cool TikTok, so love her. Now there is banging on the roof, and my cat is throwing a ball around the ground, so we love it here. But those are the 35 books that I read in December. It is definitely going to be a slower month in January because it's already the 4th and I've only read one book. But it was a 5-star, so that's a good start. I'd love to hear what you read in December or what you're planning to read this year. And I hope you enjoyed watching me talk about this ridiculous number of books. Have a great day. Bye!